Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. As you know, we talk about pretty much anything that has to do with guns. Sometimes it's the minutia of things, and sometimes it's weird. Sometimes the small things are the things that actually make guns work. I mentioned just a few minutes ago that, today I'm carrying a 1911. Went old school, went the Yaki slide. Just try that out. I like it. Kind of works for me. So, but we try different ones. There's a reason we all have these whole boxes and boxes full of holsters, right? But why 1911? Well, we could talk about that as well. But, it's really a pleasure to welcome in a guest, first time on the show here, but a guy who's really well known in the firearms world. If you don't know his name, you sure do know his work. Joining us right now is Virgil Tripp from Tripp Research. Virgil, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, Tom, pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about mags.
Well, I do want to give a little bit of your background. You've been kind of one of the custom guys working on the 1911s, and then, of course, an important part of the foundation of STI. A lot of people know that company, and creating the double stack 1911 and all that. You've been at the forefront of doing some really fine gunsmithing, innovative work for many, many years.
Yeah, that's correct. The early 90s is when a lot of that was happening. That was kind of the Wild West for double stack modular guns.
Right. And
it was fun.
It was fun. I like that. Talk about an understatement. It was fun. So you're out there. You're in what part of Texas are you in?
We're in central Texas, about 30 miles east of Austin.
Okay, good deal. All right. So magazines. It's funny. You heard me mention them. I've got just a regular old I say regular old 1911. None of them are regular old anymore because they're all pretty darn nice these days. It seems like just kind of varying scale of nice, right?
Kind of the way I put 1911s is they're like people, Tom. They're all the same, but they're all different.
I remember Clint Smith describing people's hands like, he says, hold your hands up. They're all the same, but they're all different. Exactly the same deal.
That is the truth. And the magazines are just part of a system.
Well, let's talk about that because, you're making some high-end, super-duper magazines, and a lot of people would say, well, but I can buy a magazine for $7, and my gun came with magazines. Why do I need to buy good or more expensive mags?
The pistol will tell you what it likes, and sometimes it's just fine with an inexpensive magazine. Other times it needs something a little better. Let's make a differentiation between single-stack 1911 magazines and double-stack.
Okay.
Because the failure mode generally is a failure to feed. 1911s extract, and they go bang and all that good stuff. If you're going to have a problem, it's a failure to feed, and it's usually the top round of a completely loaded magazine.
So as the slide goes forward, it needs to pick up that top round from the magazine and rip it and take it out of the lips, right?
Yeah. So it picks it up, and there's two things happening. The breech face is moving forward in a linear fashion, and then since the breech face only intercepts the top part of the whole bullet starts pivoting down. Is viewed from the left side of the gun, it is pivoting counterclockwise. Okay. So it's like a foot race, Tom, between getting to the ramp in time to scoot up the ramp, or getting there too late, and the nose catches at the bottom and the gun stalls, which is a classic nose down failure to feed.
Okay.
But double stacks pretty much don't have that because the nature of the transition from double stack to single stack keeps the round below the feeding round. It keeps it in intimate contact with the feeding round. Now, in single stack designs, what happens is that once you load them past 4, you start losing the intimate contact between the round below the feeding round. Okay. So that allows nosedive in a way a double stack doesn't. And so early on I looked at all that and said, well, I can fix this.
Yeah.
Boy, you can't. It is a fun. I don't think anybody can do it.
Okay.
It comes with the territory on single-stack magazines that you start picking up this annular gap under the feeding round after about 4 rounds.
Okay.
So from that point on, everything is pretty much a workaround, okay? And that a lot of times some of the less expensive magazines are less effective at workarounds. And so let me stop at that point.
Let me ask you. Okay, so all right, you make magazines, 1911 magazines that work, and you said, but you thought you could do a workaround, but you couldn't. But you clearly have because yours works. So what'd you do?
Okay, so you got the tube. That's a major component. You got the spring. You got the follower, and you got base pads, but they don't have a lot to do with feeding. Okay. So on the tube itself, the 1911 design determines the maximum tube width, and the 45 caliber brass determines the minimum tube width.
Okay.
So you're trapped between those two. And then now the question is, how high do you position the tube in the frame? Higher is better. You want the first hit on the feed ramp to be as high as possible, okay? Because that can eliminate subsequent jams. And by the way, a 3-point nose-up jam is about the same damn thing as a nosedive. It just didn't quite nosedive. It got out of that trap and then stuck its foot in the next trap,
Huh.
So,
and we're talking about real small measurements, increments here, I'm guessing.
Yes, sir, Tommy. I mean, we're talking about 15, 20, 30 thousandths. It makes a difference.
Holy cow.
So you ask yourself, well, why can't I just really put that magazine high? Because the slide design on a 1911 is cut out to accept the feed lips of an inserted magazine. And so on the average from all these manufacturers, there's a certain number. If you try to put the magazine too high, then it won't click in on a closed slide. So that's nature's way of telling you where to optimize the mag catch notch, the rectangular notch on the right side of the magazine. You put it as low on the tube as you can, which holds the round higher. How do you know when you're trying to hold the round too higher? It won't click in on a closed slide because the feed lips hit the slide.
Sure.
Okay. So a lot of the more inexpensive magazines, they play it very safe. They're not too racy on the location of the mag catch notch.
Right.
And so they're leaving money on the table, so to speak, as far as the feeding.
Yeah, it could be better. I mean, what I hear you saying here, Virgil, is it looks like the simplest thing in the world, a 1911 mag, but there's actually a lot of science that goes into what you're doing here.
Yeah, it's part of the whole system. It sure is. The next thing people talk about is the release point on the feed lips. Some brands are shorter than others. You've got the old military, the tapered feed ramps. You've got step or hybrid feed ramps. We pretty much, people say wad cutter feed ramps. To me, that just means straight feed ramps. And so like our Cobra Mag has that, Wilson uses that. A lot of people just use straight. And I think that's the best way to go there. And so as far as length, your gun tells you that. We're in the mag business, and we answer the telephone, so we hear it all, at one time or another. So we've heard things like, gosh, my pistol will not function reliably with brand X, but it loves yours. You guys are heroes. Occasionally, we hear a thing that says, hey, my gun functions with brand X or Y or whatever, but it has a hiccup with yours. So what I do, there's no one size fits all. There's no one brand that'll work perfectly in everything. It's all part of a system. So I consider that the hero to zero ratio when you answer the phone or talk.
You're either the hero or you're the goat. Yeah.
It is. So every brand has a hero to zero ratio, and I think ours is pretty good. Then on springs, if you're ready to move on to springs for a minute, that's kind of an interesting
we only got a couple of minutes left, so do springs and followers together if you could, please.
I can. Okay, so you either got too much spring or not enough. Typically, when you're trying to cheat 8 rounds out of a 7-round magazine, people start cutting the springs off, and you don't have enough. So with a full mag, you just don't have enough pressure on it to lift properly, and on an almost empty mag, you don't have enough pressure, so when the gun goes bang and the whole thing shocks, a lot of times you'll lose control of the loaded round. It'll go nose up. And followers tilt or anti-tilt. In my opinion, anti-tilt's the way to go. And there are several versions do that. Some of them are articulated followers or collapsible followers like Charles Kelsey invented in the old days, and we're all still massaging now. And then there's one-piece steel or one-piece plastic followers. I'm not a fan of the one-piece plastic because if it ever jumps a slide stop once, it's gone. And so on our polymer follower, we put a steel cap on the front of it, and that's what engages the steel slide stop. And on all of our followers, there's no way the follower can try to feed on the last round and hit the feed ramp. You know, if you got aluminum frames and there's certain kind of followers that try to feed, they'll contact the feed ramp and start dinging up that poor aluminum frame. So we've got a strategy to deal with that. Yeah.
Virgil, look, I'm just flat out of time. I love this because this is like the best minutia that you ever heard of. And I guess the bottom line is, if you want your 1911 to run reliably, whether it's for competition or for self-defense, one of the really keys is to have good mags, right?
They are, and we're real proud of ours, and there's several other good brands. Just spend the money once and get it over with. It's cheaper than going to the range and having a problem.
And if you want take a look at it, it's called Tripp Research, TrippResearchInc.com. Virgil Tripp, one of the pioneers in this world. Virgil, thank you so much for spending time with us. We're going to visit again, okay?
Yeah, Tom, I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Absolutely. You too.